Touch with Gene Heck, a public affairs presentation of TV 35, keeping you in touch with the issues and personalities of Claremore and Rogers County. And now, here's Gene Heck.
Welcome to In Touch. Man's impact on the environment has become an important issue for all of us today. We're here at the Sutton Avian Research Center in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. The center promotes education, conservation, and research on endangered species of wildlife birds. And our guide today is Kevin Colbert. Kevin, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jean.
What's your biggest project that you've worked on over the last 8 to 10 years?
Our biggest project is the Bald Eagle Restoration Program. And in that program, we have released nearly 250 birds in the first 7 seasons.
That's pretty impressive right there. Tell us a little bit about the history of how the eagle became an endangered species bird.
Well, there are several factors involved in the eagle's decline in the United States. Probably the one that had the greatest impact in the 70s was the use of the chemical DDT for crops as a pesticide. That chemical got into the water and then in turn into the fish, which is the bald eagle's main source of food in the wild. It didn't kill the bald eagle outright, but what it did was make the eggshells of the bald eagle so thin that when the parent eagles started to incubate, the eggs were crushed, and so no new generations were allowed to grow.
I guess the process then really starts in Florida, where the eagles are nesting and laying eggs.
Right, that's where we collect the eggs, and in fact, last year, Channel 6, KOTV, followed us to Florida and produced a documentary called On a Wing and a Prayer.
I understand Tim Yoder was the photojournalist and Rick Peterson was the reporter.
Yes.
Let's take a look at that clip of that documentary right now and see how the process starts in Florida.
1/10 of a mile, but we're close now. It says 2/10 of a mile. We're getting a little signal variation.
Using modern technology, the Sutton Avian Research Team from Bartlesville goes to work, tracking down a southern bald eagle nest. It's early December, and this is just the first phase of a 6-month journey.
You see it?
Yep, right there, Al. The goal is to place our national symbol back in southern states where it once flourished. The difficult task begins climbing a Florida pine tree. The objective, to steal the eagle eggs. Initially, Florida wildlife officials feared this would deplete the bald eagle population in their state. But research showed most of the eagles will lay more eggs if something happens to the first batch. The Sutton team calls it recycling.
Okay, 2 good eggs.
So the eagles are tricked into laying 2 sets of eggs. The Sutton team takes the first set of eggs to repopulate eagle-destitute areas of the South. And the soon-to-be-laid second set allows Florida to maintain its eagle population.
Got it!
Historically, the southern bald eagle spread its wings from eastern Oklahoma to the Carolinas and down to the Florida Everglades. In the 1980s, a study found only about 500 breeding pairs of southern bald eagles, and about 80% of the birds lived in Florida.
Look at that for a beauty.
Because Florida is rich in eagle eggs, the Sutton plan is to take the eggs, hatch them, and release the endangered birds in other southern states. But these Robin Hoods of conservation do not consider nest robbing a pleasant task. Marcus Conan.
When you're at each individual nest, you feel really bad for that nest because you're causing a lot of stress on those eagles. When you see the climber goes up, the eagles start flying around and making a lot of noise, and you know that, they're losing their eggs.
There she goes.
From the moment the mother eagle leaves the nest, the race against time begins.
Okay, let's see if we can do it.
The climber must get up the tree fast. With the mother gone, the eggs begin to cool. If the egg gets too cold, the embryo dies. But scaling an 80-foot pine tree is a difficult and dangerous task.
It's a pretty tough climb here, Alan. There are not any supporting branches above the nest. May be impossible to get up here.
The Sutton team members don't do the climbing. They leave it up to tree surgeons such as Wayne Norton, who seems to be oblivious to the danger. Using ropes, spikes, and sheer strength, he pulls himself up into the eagle's nest.
Hot dog, pay dirt, Alan. Pay dirt. We've got 2 beautiful eggs here.
Great.
Okay.
Wayne puts on a mask and surgical gloves to keep bacteria off the eggs. Bacteria could infiltrate the shell and kill the embryo.
This is very exciting up here. It's almost like hallowed ground.
Wayne places the eggs in a padded container and carefully lowers it in a backpack.
Okay, eggs coming down.
Sutton team member Sarah Gale takes the container. She and Alan Beskey then head back to their truck, where they have a portable incubator to keep the eggs warm.
Looks good. And that one looks fine also. A little more elongated egg than the other one. See the difference in shape between the two?
Yeah. Kevin, that was really interesting to see how the eggs are obtained in Florida. What's the next step back here in Bartlesville?
Well, we put the eggs on a plane and then come directly back here to Bartlesville to the best incubators in the world here at the Chicken House.
Okay, let's take a look.
All right. Okay, we need to go in through there.
Okay, so this is the chicken house.
This is it. All these boxes that you see, the ones with the doors on them, contain chickens that are brooding eagle eggs. There's a very important contest that takes place much earlier in the season to determine which of these chickens around here in the house will sit on eggs.
Okay, so these chickens are actually maybe called foster parents?
Yes, that's right. They are brooding the eagle eggs nearly to the point of hatching, but not quite.
How long does that incubation period last?
It's a 35-day incubation period. The eggs have been incubated about 2 weeks, typically, under the parent eagles before we take them in Florida. And then they are put immediately under the chickens, as I mentioned before, and they stay there until close to the 35th day. We can tell by weighing and measuring, which we do every day with the eggs, how far along they are. And before it's time for them to hatch, we bring them into the incubation room. We don't want them to hatch under the chickens because it would not be good for either the chicken or the baby eaglet.
You mentioned earlier pipping. What is pipping?
Pipping is that first break in the egg that starts the process of hatching for the eaglet.
So before the pipping, you'd want to take them out of the chicken house.
That's right. And in fact, we have other indicators besides the weight and the size. The eaglets inside the egg will start peeping and making a lot more noise, moving more. And when that happens, we take them from under the chickens to the incubator room.
We got a demonstration we can look to see and compare and contrast the difference between a chicken egg over here and a simulated eagle egg.
That's right. This is not a real eagle egg, I should say. This is a fake egg that we have fashioned because, as I mentioned before, we have a process of choosing which chickens will sit on the real eagle eggs. That process involves seeing which chickens sit best on their own eggs and then trying them out on the fake eggs. The ones who sit best on the fake eggs get the actual eagle eggs in December when they're brought back from Florida.
So these guys over here are the alternates. They didn't make it this time.
They didn't make the cut this time, that's right.
Okay. So how many eggs, eagle eggs, does the chicken actually sit on? 2, 3?
Well, believe it or not, they can handle up to 3 eagle eggs. You see what a variation in size there is. But to be safe, we like them to sit on no more than 2 eggs each.
And so it's important that they are kept warm. Mm-hmm. Are they rotated or turned?
Oh yes, the chicken naturally rotates the egg with their beak. That's what we try to duplicate in the incubator, but Mother Nature does it best.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's take a look at the incubation phase and see what the baby chicks are doing.
Okay.
From the chicken house, Kevin, the eggs are taken here to the incubation room. What goes on in here?
Well, the eggs are taken first to the incubators, and these 2 strange-looking contraptions are incubators, laboratory incubators. They contain 2 eggs that have just pipped yesterday, I believe, and it will take about 24 hours, sometimes a little bit more, for after the pip occurs, the chick inside rests a little bit, gets going on the energy it'll take to make the break all around the eggshell, and that process takes quite a number of hours.
Do you ever intervene, like if the embryo was getting dried out or it looked like it wasn't progressing as you would expect? Do you ever intervene?
Yes, we do. We let nature take its course when it's doing well, but when there's problems, those that you mentioned are the drying out of the membranes. That's an important one. Also, if it sounds, the peeping or the movement of the egg is less, or it sounds like the chick inside is weak, we might help. But if you like, I will ask Miri, the technician here, to take the gauze off one of the eggs so that you can see the pip.
So when did this pip start? Within the last 12 hours?
No, I believe this one was yesterday evening sometime. And so you see it's just a little bit of a break on the egg. And after that chick inside has rested a while, it will start to make a break in a circle. I think you can just see that movement now at where the pip was.
I see the thermometer right there.
Yes, you see the egg shaking a little bit. That's from the movement of the chick inside.
What temperature is it kept at?
And that's another important aspect. And you see the thermometers were right next to the egg there.
Exactly.
There's an optimum temperature for the eggs to be at the whole time they're incubating, and it's typically around 98.6 to 99.2. Is that right, Miri?
It's just a little bit higher than that.
A little bit higher now.
Not too far apart.
Okay. All right, but there's a very small range of temperatures that is optimum for the eggs, and that's one of the duties of Miri and the other technicians, to check those temperatures constantly to see that the eggs are kept at that temperature.
What's your overall success rate, Kevin, here in the incubation phase? Do you ever lose any eggs?
Well, yes. Let me explain some differences for you. When we take the eggs from Florida, we are allowed by the permit from the federal government and the state government of Florida to take a certain number of fertile eggs. Now, there's a difference. Some eggs we take may not be fertile. That means they have not been fertilized by the male. And some eggs may be dead. So those don't count towards our total number of eggs that we're permitted. Sometimes we can tell right away that an egg is dead or that it's infertile. Sometimes we have to candle it several times and weigh and measure to ascertain that. So once we find out the total number of fertile eggs we have, over the 8 seasons that we've done this, we have a success rate to the hatching point of about 80%. That is, of all the eggs we collect, about 80% of those eggs will hatch into eaglets.
That's a pretty impressive statistic.
Well, yes, it is, but we take as many precautions as you can possibly think of, and there's more difficulties in the wild than there are in-house here. Of course, we have difficulties too. We aren't nature. We can't duplicate exactly, but we do have some very good success rates.
Is the overall survival rate, would you say, higher under these circumstances or in these environments than out in the wild?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Combined, we have this 80% success rate from taking the eggs into the hatching, and then from the hatching to the time the birds are released when they're flying, we have about a 95% success rate.
That's even better.
Yes, it is. And compared to the wild, there's about a 50% success rate from the whole point of hatching to the fledgling of the birds.
I noticed one of your technicians just brought in, it looks like Some
food.
type of bird for feeding.
That's right. This is
What is this?
This is eagle food. This looks like quail meat. Sarah, do you want to tell us what parts of the quail this is?
We've got quail breast right here with some skin, and we've got some liver. We try to go really late on their organs for the first couple of days. And we've got some meat with some bones, and the bones are minced up real small so that they can digest it easily. But we really have to be careful with organs until they're about 3 days of age, and then they get more organs.
So you prepare this all specially to feed the new chicks.
Yeah, they get fresh meat. And matter of fact,
Do you have the quails here at
yes,
the
yep. We
center?
raise quail. We raise about 900 a week. So, and each quail or each eaglet goes through about 800 quail.
Boy, they eat a lot.
They eat a lot.
I think Mary was going to show us here on. We've got a baby chick or eaglet that's 1 day old, and I think you were going to show us how the eaglet is fed. Okay, as we just said, this eaglet is about 24 hours old, right, Kevin?
Mm-hmm. And they start eating right as soon as they hatch. And as Sarah said, this is quail, but in the wild, eaglets eat mostly fish. We do also feed them fish, but we can't keep up with their voracious appetites and the amount of fresh fish that would be needed. So we vary their diet by some fish and a lot of quail.
Mary, tell us what you're doing here now.
Well, I'm soaking the food, the quail meat, in saline because they need some kind of moisture, and so.
Does that make it easier for him to swallow the
It makes
meat?
it easier, right, for him to swallow the meat, for him to grasp it in his little beaks.
He looks like he's hungry.
Oh yeah, he's.
Is this his, what, second or third feeding?
This is his second feeding.
And how often do the babies have to be fed?
Well, there is a feeding schedule depending on how old they are, and the youngest birds get fed 4 times a day at 8 in the morning, 11 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 5 o'clock. And then the older chicks, then the older eaglets get fed 3 times a day, 8, 12, and 5.
So it's a pretty regimented schedule that you follow.
Oh yeah, after a while when we have a whole lot of eaglets, it's very hectic.
It's like a newborn nursery, it looks like.
Oh yeah.
The cleanup is about the same too, isn't it, Mary?
Clean up's a mess.
Now, can this baby see you, Mary?
Well, at this age, he can't see very well. He knows that there's something in front of him, but his focal length is very, very short, and so you can watch when I'm feeding that he doesn't even know what this is right now. He can just see something in front of him, probably about half an inch to an inch. Okay.
Can we turn him around?
Yeah, sure. Let me change it a little bit. Okay, baby.
Okay, we got a diaper change here.
Yes.
Okay, we got a clean diaper for the baby. Now he's going to get ready to get his second feeding. So he doesn't know that it's a human feeding him.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, why is that important, Mary?
Well, we don't want the eagle chicks to get used to humans because, for obvious reasons, when they're released in the wild, if they're familiar with humans, they could be in a great deal of danger. And we call that imprinting when they're familiar with a person or people.
So you don't want him to imprint to humans. What do you want him to imprint to?
To other eagles.
Okay.
So, for obvious reasons, again, we have this latex puppet that's of an adult eagle.
So he actually thinks that this is his mom.
Yeah, he does.
Well, you're doing a good job.
Well, thanks.
Are there any safety precautions, Mary, that you have to follow when you're feeding him?
Yeah, for somebody this young, or for an eaglet this young, we want to hold them steady a little bit because they don't have the coordination that's quite necessary for feeding on their own. And so their necks are very fragile. So transporting him from his tub to here, see it right now, he's very, very uncoordinated.
Right.
So here we go. Before each feeding, I try to whistle at them a little bit. So, good chick. Well, no, that's not where it goes, but we'll try again.
Did you have to have special training, Mary, to learn this technique?
Well, training so far is apprenticeship, learning from somebody else. I think that this type of work you need to have someone show you exactly what to do, because there's so many ways you can go wrong.
Now, does his peeping indicate that he wants more, that
This
he
means that
likes
he's
it?
hungry.
Okay.
Yeah. Oops. There he goes.
Well, it looks like he's done a really good job eating his second meal. What's the next step in the process, Kevin?
Well, the next step requires us to go to another building called the Chick Lab. After the eaglets are about a week old, they're taken from this building to the Chick Lab for the next process, the next step in the process of their release.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, here we are now in room 1 of the Chick Lab, and I'm about to show you chick number 14. He was hatched on January 3rd, so he's about 6 days old now, and you can see how much this chick is grown in comparison to the one we saw in the incubation lab. In fact, they continue to grow at this very fast rate of speed throughout the time that they're here at the center. They spend another 5 weeks here in the Chick Lab, where they go through various stages of growth, and then they're taken to the avian barn. In the avian barn, they are put in groups instead of these single tubs that you see in front of you, and they start exercising their wings and get ready
to learn to fly.
That's right. They're learning how to fly at that point. And it's at that point, when they're ready to learn to fly, that we pack them off to take them to the release towers, where the next part of the process begins.
Where have they been released to, like in the last year or two?
Last year, for example, they were released in Alabama.
I think we're going to take a look now at another section from the documentary On a Wing and a Prayer that shows the release of these eagles in Alabama.
In Alabama, the eagles appear to be in jail. They're actually in a 30-foot high release tower in a wildlife park near Tuscaloosa. The bars play a critical role. They keep the eagles from tumbling off the platform before they're ready to fly, and they give the eagles time to adjust to the wilderness. Sarah observes them through a small one-way glass window.
They do some pretty strange things. It's fun to watch them learn how to use perches and how to fly, how to control their flight. It's a lot of fun to watch them play up there and to learn how to do things.
These eagles are now 11 weeks old and ready to fly. It's time for the bars to come down, but that's easier said than done. Wearing camouflage, team members try to move the eagles away from the bars. Eventually, the stunned birds are herded back into the tower, and a tarp is put in place, separating the eagles from the Alabama game rangers who take down the bars.
Well, this is parole day. This is when they get out of jail.
When the bars are taken down and the tarp is lifted, the eagles are free to take their first flight. But the eagles don't move. It's a good sign.
If any of these birds are forced off the tower or forced out of the area too early, we're pretty confident that they will die because they are not ready to leave the area right now.
It's dangerous because the eagles haven't developed their hunting skills yet. Until they do, they usually stay close to the tower where the Sutton team feeds them. "90 miles away at another release tower in southern Alabama, Keith Williamson tosses the eagles their breakfast. Keith works for the Alabama Wildlife Program.
In my 29 and a quarter years of my life, I've never seen a bald eagle in the environment. And I think that's pretty sad, you know.
With no parents to instruct them, these young ones boldly launch out into the air. Flying is instinctive, But Sutton team member Gary Kress says landing is a different story.
Stopping is a big problem for them. Even if they can fly, it's kind of like a kid with a bike that doesn't know about brakes on a bike. And like kids run bikes into trees, eagles often just crash into a tree and grab whatever limb they can get a hold of.
They weigh about 9 pounds and are fully grown, but it will take 5 years for their white feathers to appear. Their eyesight is phenomenal. Eagles can see 3 to 4 times better than a human. With their powerful 6-foot wingspan, they can cruise along at about 40 miles per hour. They are fearsome birds of prey.
Bald eagles are kind of competitive birds. Those birds that are aggressive are the ones that are more likely to survive in all probability. They're going to go for what they want. They're going to go for that food. I think it's a good instinct.
By late June, the eagles will wander off and they'll be on their own. The eagles are strong, but the Sutton team estimates only half of the 54 eagles released in Alabama will survive their first year in the wild.
It's getting through their first winter when waters freeze up and just stressful time of year. It's being naive and not knowing where to go for food.
The Sutton team hopes the survivors will return to this area when they're ready to breed in 4 to 5 years and make Alabama their year-round home. Returning and repopulating is the true test of the project.
So this is Bensar.
Yes, it is. Bensar is a 9-month-old bald eagle hatched from parents that are captive here that were injured in the wild. And he is about the same age as those eaglets that you saw in the Alabama segment a little bit ago. There's one major difference, however. Bensar is an educational bird, and we have permission to use him for education purposes, and that's why we're able to be handling him and be so near to him. Those that we released in the wild, of course, we will never have human contact.
Mm-hmm. So you're coming to an end of this part of the project, working with the bald eagles. It's been very successful. What does the future hold for the center?
Well, the future of the center we will continue with our educational tours and presentations, but as far as the research is concerned, we will focus on declining species of prairie birds. For the last 25 years or so, several species of birds in this area, in many areas of the prairie, have been declining in significant numbers, and we want to look at some of the factors that might be causing those declines.
So if there's anybody interested in making a contribution, you're a nonprofit organization?
That's right. We are funded by individuals, corporations, and foundations for our budget each year. And we have had a lot of help from people throughout the state in the region for the bald eagle work, and we're very grateful for that, and we welcome anybody else who is interested in helping us in this new project.
Well, Kevin, I'd sure like to thank you. You've done a great job of giving us a tour of this fantastic Sutton Avian Research Center, and it points up that all of us have to be responsible for our environment. And I'd like to thank you, too, for watching, and we hope to see y'all on the next In Touch.